We're going to give it another minute. We'll get going. All right. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for joining us this evening on Data Center 101. I'm Alexander Austin, President and CEO of the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here with some very special guests who are going to just kind of give us an overview from their perspective of data centers and the looming conversation that we've had here in the county for quite some time. And I just want to thank everybody. I'm going to kind of do a round of introductions, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well. But just a round of intro so we know who everyone is, and then we'll get into a presentation, and then we'll follow up with some question and answers. And it looks like we have close to 40 guests right now and still coming in. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Ms. Kelly Schultz, who is the president of the Maryland Tech Council. Kelly, I'll give you a couple seconds to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alexander. I am Kelly Schultz, and I am the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council. And we have created a program under the umbrella of the Maryland Tech Council called the Data Center Alliance. And so we're here today to provide some community support and understanding around the idea of data centers at the statewide and the county level.
Thank you. I would like to introduce Mr. Leon Bailey, who is the chair of the Prince George's County Revenue Authority.
Thank you, Alexandra. My name is Leon Bailey. I am the chair of the Redevelopment Authority of Prince George's County. Also proud to serve on the Maryland Marketing Partnership, which our focus is on bringing business to the state of Maryland. I'm also here to share my insights on data centers and the results of not just the state of Maryland, but within Prince George's County.
Thank you, Leon. And Ms. Julie Auberg, who is the co-chair of the Data Center Alliance for the Maryland Steering Committee.
Thank you, Alexander. I'm Julie Oberg. I'm very happy to be here today. As you had mentioned, I'm the co-chair of the new Data Center Alliance of Maryland, and I think it's the first in the nation for a state to bring together this coalition of stakeholders to be able to speak with one voice from all aspects of the data center industry to help dispel myths and address concerns that communities may have, and help bring education to the general public about data centers. Nice to be here.
Really, thank you for joining us. And last but certainly not least, Don Slayman,
Well, thank you.
IBW Local 26.
Thank you, Alexander. I am speaking from Prince George's County. Our union is headquartered here in Lanham, Maryland, and we have 15,000 members, and half of those members work in the data center industry. We've doubled our membership in the last 7 years because of this industry, and they retrofit, do prefab modular manufacturing work, they do maintenance, and they build data centers, and 45% of the construction of a data center is electrical. So we're happy to be here and share our thoughts about the industry. Thank you.
Really, thank you for joining us. All right. So, again, we're coming together really just to have a conversation. There's been a lot of press around data centers. There are meetings that are happening. There are a lot of things that, we're hearing in the airways. And so hearing it from the industry and the advocates, I think this is a great opportunity for us to just kind of balance out the conversation. And ultimately, informed decisions are made when there's more information. And so I want to start by giving Kelly, you have the floor for presentation. And I'm going to sit back and take some notes. I know there's been some great dialogue, but I think we'll be very happy of some of the points that we'll hear as an audience. So Kelly, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. And thank you for your partnership and being able to pull this together to present to your members and to the Prince George's County community as a collective. I think it's super important. I am going to share my screen. I practiced this, so I think we should be able to do it pretty well. So I wanted to start out by saying why the Data Center Alliance has come together for this very important mission and this task to talk to you and others. And it literally is because over the course of the past year, maybe year and a half, members of the ecosystem, that's everybody that works inside the data center community here in Maryland and our surrounding areas, came to the Maryland Tech Council, who has been advocating for this type of innovation and growth for our communities, to speak with one voice, a larger voice to be able to educate and educate not only elected officials and decision makers, but also communities to be able to put some sort of comfort in their world to understand the truth and the facts behind data centers as opposed to some of the myths that are around there, and pulling together subject matter experts like we have here today and those that are in our community to be able to answer those questions in a meaningful way to provide a path forward. Um, and so I will just preface this presentation by saying that there was a report that was released today by the Maryland Tech Council on what a hypothetical data center in Prince George's County would look like and what those impacts would be to Prince George's County specifically. You can find that full report if anybody is online at mdtechcouncil.com. That's mdtechcouncil.com. It was released today. It did go out in a press release. Elected officials have received a preview of that, and community members as well. So, a little bit of my presentation is going to talk about that. A larger part of the presentation is going to talk about the real life data center construction that's happening right now, the largest in Maryland, which is in Frederick County at the Quantum Frederick project. And so some of the numbers and the data that we have about the real life, what's happening right now initiatives are going to be discussed in the remaining part of that presentation. So I just wanted to preface it in that way. Julie Oberg, who's with us today, she had mentioned that she is a co-chair of our steering committee. We do have a steering committee that is going to be up and running within the next couple of weeks, and we'll make those announcements of community members from across the state and many different parts of the ecosystem and community activism to be able to help us in Maryland to understand what some of this is going to mean for all of us. Her partner, co-chair, Dusty Rude, he is the CEO of an organization called Rogers Consulting, and they are currently working on data center projects in Frederick and other parts of the state and the adjoining states as well. So I just wanted to preface this presentation with that. So, why data centers are in demand. I mean, I would think that all of us are really educated and we understand the need for data centers. I like to go back to a period of time. I'm dating myself here, but when we all went into our office environment and there was these weird little closets that were in all of these office buildings everywhere that you went, and the doors were usually locked. The only one who had a key was our IT professional that was there. And so each of those offices, you had your very own little data center, right? It was your server storage room area, and those rooms were air conditioned and they were maintained by somebody within your office to be able to make sure that they happen. We have those same um, data centers now, except now they're centralized, right? So the decentralization of that data existed, and it existed for your own personal data that your office was collecting. And each of our computers, our PCs at that point in time, were all connected to that, and the information went. Now, the advancement of data compute has been extreme. We all know this as well. We have a couple of here, right? Chat GPT, Zoom, Netflix, Facebook. I'm going to say online banking, PayPal, everything, everywhere we go, there is the need for consumer and business data. So instead of sending that data to our very own storage closet, we are sending that information to the cloud and we are collecting more of that. The cloud is actually not up in the sky. It's actually a data center. And so we see those popping up around the country because of the need for an increased amount of data collection, but also an increased amount of usage of that data that we are collecting, and the amount of time and energy that's needed in order to be able to do that. Over a 10-year period, I would say from maybe 2010 to 2018, the data compute, the collection and the usage of data increased by about 550%. And that is pretty extreme. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the amount of energy that has been used in order to be able to collect and analyze and distribute that data has only increased by 6%. right? So we're talking about centralization of initiatives that we have continuously used in the business process. So this is a little hypothetical. So the study that we had done, and it was done through the SAGE Economic Group. They did the study for the Maryland Tech Council on a hypothetical project in Prince George's County because we don't have a real project to go back to. So we based this on what we consider to be an average size data center of about 800,000 square feet data center. And what we had come up with, or what SAGE Policy Group had come up with, is that with that hypothetical 800,000 square foot data center, about 4,800 direct and indirect jobs are going to be supported during the construction process, right? So that is every part of construction, bringing economic revenue value to the state and to the local jurisdictions. And it's estimated that about $1 billion of economic activity would occur from that 800,000 square foot project. And with that $1 billion of economic activity, about 250 jobs in the county would be supported once the project is operational. Right. So we talk about the construction process being a lot of jobs, a lot of people on site. But once that project is complete in the construction process, ongoing jobs that would be adhered to and be needed to support that data center would be right around 250 jobs. Ongoing year after year. And I'll just say, and I know Don Slayman is here from IBEW, from the local in Prince George's County in that region, and he can talk a little bit about this when we're finished with the presentation, but those are good paying jobs. They're really good paying jobs, and most of those jobs are going to be filled by those that actually live in that local area. Right now, unfortunately, folks within the IBEW, within that local, um, are working, but they're working in a neighboring state. Right. And so one of the arenas that we want to be able to get involved with to take these conversation to is how do we keep our Maryland workers working in Maryland projects as opposed to projects that are happening across another state line? And that's really important, not only for us in the industry, but especially important for those members who want to be able to spend more of their quality time with their families and in their communities as opposed to driving outside of their community to work. So the hypothetical data center, let's talk a little bit about the fiscal impact. So we see here that just about $20 million in annual county tax revenues. Every year, about $20 million would come in from this hypothetical data center of about 800,000 square feet. And that's an average 300 megawatt data center. So of that $20 million that is received annually from the county, what does that equate to? How can we see of what that works out to be? That comes out to about 175 police officer salaries,
Mm.
or about 158 firefighters, or about 176 teacher salaries. Those are significant. And in a time where local jurisdictions, counties, are receiving less and less funding from the state level in order to be able to accommodate the infrastructure and the needs of our community, those are significant numbers for counties to be able to look at and to determine where their needs are, where their unmet needs are, and how they can satisfy some additional resources to fulfill those needs of the community. So again, I'm going to have Don Slayman kind of talk about this and when we finish this presentation. But here's the overall reach of our workforce as we see it right now. 300 to 400 electrical workers are employed right now at Quantum Frederick and the LTW sites in Hanover, Maryland. That's what's happening right now. That's how many IBEW workers are out there at this point in time. 100 new workers are hired and through the prefabrication facility at Quantum Frederick. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the Quantum Frederick project because I think it's a significant project to talk about and how it is unique to Maryland. Quantum Frederick began a few years ago as a multi-data center facility on about 2,100 acres on a lot an acreage that used to be a steel smelting plant. They called it the East Alco plant. And on that East Alco plant, we used to have all of these jobs and creation, but it was a steel smelting plant. It has been closed for over 20 years. So that facility was prime for some sort of general industrialized redevelopment. There was a development company that came in. They're now working to build multiple data centers, large load users on that specific area. Um, and for the first time in Frederick's history, there is going to be a new apprenticeship training program in Frederick in order to be able to accommodate the work on that site. So that is really exciting for Frederick County. It should be exciting for the other surrounding jurisdictions because it means access to highly skilled, trained labor. Um, 240 apprentices at that facility were accepted in year one. All of them are now working. They're all employed and working in the local jurisdictions in which their family lives as well. You can see some of these numbers here. We're really excited about the possibilities of new growth and being able to have our workers living and working in the same jurisdiction in which they are. So, local tax revenues, I think, is really a big part of this conversation. There was a couple of years ago, the Maryland Tech Council distributed a similar economic impact study to what we have produced for Prince George's County today. Um, but the numbers that are in actual progression compared to the hypothetical that we had done a couple of years ago is dramatic. So, what a new study done by HR&A, which is HR and advisors, studied the 16 million square feet of the Quantum Frederick campus in Frederick County. Annually, this is all brand new studies that came out just a couple of weeks ago. It would be about $215 million annually that Frederick County will realize in tax revenue. Now, just to take a fine point on that, Frederick County's average revenue collected per year is about $500 million. So this increase is dramatic in the fact that 50% increase in the amount of revenues that would be collected. And we all know those programs that the county funds: education, police, fire, parks, ag preservation, all will be able to receive and realize additional revenues as the county moves forward with this project. So, recordation taxes, for those that are not familiar with all the specific ways in which county realizes taxes coming from um, the general public, recordation taxes are a one-time tax, right? So, this is just an example of what to be able to look at with recordation taxes. Recordation taxes occur, you pay them every time somebody purchases a piece of property. So this $50.6 million is an example of the recordation taxes so far from the lots on that 2,100 acres in Quantum Frederick of what the county has received as one-time taxes. The breakdown, which will be different for every county based on your county commissioners, or in this case, your county council and your county executive, have divided up as far as what the recordation taxes go to. But I wanted to send this as an example, specifically because of ag preservation. And in Frederick County, you might understand preservation is a big deal, right? We still think as being an agricultural community, when in fact, agriculture is the largest industry in the state of Maryland still. Last year, during budget time, the state had decided that because of the budget constraints that the state had, that counties, local jurisdictions were not going to receive ag preservation funding. They were going to hold off on that for a year, which of course the counties are disappointed about, the farm bureaus are disappointed about. But Frederick County Because of the recordation taxes that they collected from 4 sites in the Quantum Frederick project, was able to distribute $12.6 million to ag preservation because of the distinction, the way that the percentages are distributed, based on Frederick County laws and regulations. So there's unfound money, and there will be additional properties that will be sold in order to be able to accommodate this formula even further going forward. So I want to talk a little bit about myth busting. So we talked about some great news. And so people are very concerned about a couple of issues, water being one of them. And we understand that. The Data Center Alliance and the Maryland Tech Council wants to be able to make sure that communities understand that data centers do not have the need to go into, on a general basis, the aquifer. People are very concerned about going into somebody's well water and being able to take the water out of the system. So water mainly is used to cool the servers in that data center room. And so it circulates through the data center as kind of a loop process. And so the fear of taking the water from the aquifer, from the ground, um, has been resolved by many using the innovative practices of taking water from the existing county water and sewer lines and connecting to that county infrastructure to use gray water, water that hasn't been completely cleaned yet, to circulate through the servers, through the server room, to use that as its initial cooling activity. And then once that water runs through and cools the servers to where they need to be, then it goes back into the county's water and sewer infrastructure for the completion of their cleaning process to use within the facility. So I like to say it's not a using a consuming of water, it's the water's on loan, if that makes any sense. And I think that there's a lot of innovations that are being done and continuing to happen in order to be able to make this a full reality. One of the other concerns and myths has been from communities that we've spoken to, the idea that data centers in your community is going to lower the potential sale of your real estate in a particular area. And I pull up this slide just as a reminder that Loudoun County, Virginia, which Don kind of referenced to in his opening statement, Loudoun County, Virginia is pretty much the epicenter for data centers in the world. There is no place on the planet that has the um, the condensed amount of data centers as Loudoun County, Virginia. No place else on the planet has them like this. And yet, Loudoun County, Virginia, that specific county, increases their value on their home sales greater than the average Virginia house. Um, so, of course, you have to take everything in context, but the fear that the idea of a data center in your community would reduce your value on your property, we haven't seen a huge example of that at this point in time. And we talked a little bit about the rural heritage and the ag preservation. These are some of the things, and as I've been watching this process through Frederick County and what they've done in order to be able to regulate and put into motion some parameters for data centers and how they are going to interact in their community, I believe Frederick County Council and the county executive did a really great job. And every county council and county executive and commissioner across the state has the ability to, build in some safeguards. But some of the ideas that Frederick County has done is said, we're going to limit data centers in our county to less than 1% of the county's land mass. So it's a very small portion of acreage in the largest geographical county in the state. So that is one parameter that they have put on. They've also said that for every 1 acre of land that is developed by data centers, 5 acres of farmland will go into preservation. So they have put that safeguard in there for ag preservation as well. And one of the big common questions, and it might come up, I think I saw some questions that had been submitted. They put in a 500-foot setback for data centers as it relates to adjoining residential zoned areas, um, which is much higher, by the way, than Loudoun County and some of our other partnering jurisdictions. And so some of the additional best practices, we can talk about those, but noise buffers, the county has implemented ways in which to test for excessive noise. Um, they have talked about berming and tree plantings and really ways in which to make the data center a proper member of the community, which is something that we heavily advocate for at the Data Center Alliance. So this is in relation to um, the noise and the noise that's produced. And we talked about this, but um, every local jurisdiction, regardless of what type of business is coming into your community, there are existing noise ordinances that are out in existence in statute or regulatory actions within your local community. Prince George's County has them. This is an example of what sound levels are. This is where Frederick County in Maryland has set as far as their maximum sound levels for the typical data center. The typical data center runs at about 55 to 60 decibels. And you can see some of the comparisons there. So we've heard a lot of complaints from people that have said that the noise pollution that's going to happen in their communities is going to be deafening. Um, a normal conversation like we're having today, I might be speaking a little bit louder than a normal conversation, but that's at about 60 decibels. Rain as it hits your roof is about 40 decibels. So you can see some of the comparisons there. But even so, being able to manufacture ways in which to drown out some of that noise is really important. And there's a lot of innovative things that people are doing. I just heard that in one example, with data centers, they have decided to redesign where those generators are going to go. So they can go in between two existing buildings as opposed to on the periphery. So the buildings themselves act as a sound barrier so that noise isn't going to travel outwards. It'll stay contained within that community. Energy. This is the big elephant in the room, and I understand the concern for this. If I were to say anything about energy, our General Assembly really needs to take this on as in Annapolis as the biggest issue that's leading us forward into economic development in general. Without additional energy generation in the state of Maryland, it will be very difficult to have any economic development projects, regardless of whether those projects are data centers or not. Um, and so I think that's really important to understand is that Maryland needs energy. Regardless of data centers, Maryland needs more energy to be generated. Um, and there was a bill, we talk about energy and energy costs. There was a bill that um, was passed last year, and it's on your screen, the Next Generation Energy Act. And you can see that the constraint of energy and the need for more interconnection that that burden is placed on the user of that energy. So right now, Maryland law says that data center uses, if there is more interconnection, if there is more infrastructure that is needed, the data centers will be paying for that interconnection. So by law, Maryland requires that data center developers, not ratepayers, pay for the electrical grid upgrades needed to serve their facility. I think that's really important for people to understand. There's a lot of concern about rates going up. I would say that rates that you have seen going up right now, it's not because of energy that's going to data centers, because that hasn't occurred in this calendar year. But it will occur in the future. The rates going up have to do with the, unfortunately, um, not enough energy that's coming into the grid from Maryland generation. And we are, as a state, purchasing it at a higher cost than other states are purchasing it at this point in time. And so that's it in a nutshell. As far as where we stand with this presentation specifically, Alexander, there's a lot to unpack out of that. And I know that you have a good number of questions that have come in from your members and those that are listening to this webinar right now. But we're happy as a group, we're going to get buy in from all of these folks that are experts in their area.
Absolutely, Kelly. That was a great presentation. And I have to say, as much as I have tried to stay abreast of the data, there were some things in there I did not know. So I really appreciate you shedding light on some of those things, particularly around energy. That is something I was a little familiar with, but some of the other thought processes when we talked about some of the civil service general, fire, police, EMS. Those are some very important data points when we talk about economic growth. So I really appreciate you sharing this data. And so I think you touched on some of the questions. I'm going to circle back to some things. One thing I did want to share that I heard was how many of the workers who are working on the data centers are within the local community. So I thought that was good to talk about because in Prince George's County, we have close to 946,000 people. That is significant when we talk about wage to earning or wages to per capita. And then the other part I would say is, I mean, we talked about, opportunities and threats, but could you expand on a little bit more in terms of okay, what top opportunities for data centers in Prince George's County? What are the potential threats of a data center in Prince George's County? Or it could be not having a data center in Prince George's County, which I also think you alluded to, because I think we have to talk about the residual effects of not making a decision.
Yeah, so the first question first, I would like to ask Don if maybe he wanted to kind of take on that question about the types of employment, the workforce, the salaries, who's working in the county now, where they're working now, and what the opportunities are for them.
Certainly, Kelly. Thank you. So, we've been building data centers as a local union since their inception, since the first hyperscale AOL data center was built in Loudoun County, and since the terminus of the internet was Loudoun County, and EDS and Ross Perot and and WorldCom, and back late '80s, early '90s, and but only since 2018 has it just been booming, and this industry, this digital infrastructure is jobs of tomorrow being performed today. And the data is insatiable. Uh, Modern society is based on potable water, electricity, and data. That is modern civilization. And I was on at the NVIDIA conference in Washington D.C. last week, and I was on stage with the head of the National Association of Electrical Manufacturers, and Deborah said that uh, uh, this industry is generating $7.6 trillion, $3.5 trillion of components inside the data centers, wires, conduit, and all the servers and components, and then 3.5 trillion in the construction. It is dominating our society. What used to be said was good for America, used to say what was good for GM was good for America. That's when the auto industry back in the last century was at its peak, a third of our economy. The Economist magazine says this industry is 40% of our economy. We're all hoping that this all pans out, that with AI. But these jobs that are creating, since its inception, it's been the industry, because of the continuous operating systems and the need for redundancy, you can't lose data, has lent itself to being dependent upon a skilled workforce. And so, unlike the canals and our railroads, which drove our industrialization of the 19th century, or the automobile industry and the highways, which drove our economy in the 20th century. In the 21st century, in the 18th, the railroads were built by indentured servants and people pressed into gangs. The auto industry, it took a long struggle between labor and industry before they came to an accommodation. But in the data center industry, from the very beginning, because of the need to have these things, it's all about shovel to market. It's all about that. Since these data centers, they're already spoken for before they're built. There's the capacity. There is 1% occupancy availability, and so because of the speed to build these, and because of the you can't make mistakes, you can't lose data. because of the continuous operating systems, it is heavily dependent upon skilled workers. And so our members, who 45% of the construction of a data center is electrical work, our members, our journey persons make $59.50 an hour. We'll be making $62 in June of next year. The apprentices start at $27 an hour. We bought in 610 apprentices last year. The year before, we bought in 515. And my local union alone. And to get into our programs, you just need to pass an aptitude test in algebra and English comprehension. And then you go to an interview, and the interview is 2 from our contractors, 2 from our union, and 1 from our training center, and you get a score. And we took the top 610 applicants. We had another 700 that we also that can try again next year, but also can still work with us and take night classes. And this training is all free, right? We call it the other college, but without debt. So you work 9 days in the field, and then the 10th day you come in and you train in our training centers and book learning, and you get paid as if you're on the job. So you're getting paid as if you showed up at work, because but the majority of the training is this mentorship on the job with our journey persons. And so it's this ecosystem is totally paid for by our contractors. We have 200 contractors, 30 of which are minority and women-owned businesses. And we don't use government money. It's we just keep on, but we pay it forward. And so these are just great careers. And the industry it has a great economy from its infancy, has been organically a pro worker, and because it's dependent upon skilled workers. And there's a misnomer that nobody works in these data centers after they're built. The quantum, the East Alcoa plant that operated in Frederick, Maryland, that Kelly referred to, it was open for 39 years, and those were great paying jobs, and people wanted to have those smelting jobs, and they're organized by the Steelworkers Union, and they were good jobs, but it was only open for 39 years, and it peaked at 683 employees. That same land there, as Kelly showed, is going to be 15 million square feet. That's going to be well over 1,200 electricians maintaining that facility of our members, and that's separate from the end users that monitor it. But these are folks maintaining, swapping out equipment, swapping out customers, reconfiguring the energy systems, and so that is and those folks are paid just like our other folks. And the other thing is that right across the street from me here in Lanham, Maryland, J.E. Richards has a prefab modular facility where we, because of the economies of scale, because of the data center epicenter is right here in our metro area, we are creating prefab modular work for those data centers, and we do it for Google. Google's exporting that to their jobs all over the world. So right here, you're having 6-figure blue collar jobs, right? Miles from the seat of power, the world's power, so between this prefab manufacturing work, between the construction and the maintenance, there's another item is the retrofitting. These things are not static. Once they're built, the evolution of the components inside is so rapid that you're constantly changing out the servers and the components, and that also changes the energy configurations. And so there's work on power systems. And so we have almost a fourth of our members who work in data centers are doing retrofitting. So this is a job that doesn't go away, and and it's highly paid. And we're working with women's sports clubs, the Mystics and the Spirit and the Football Divas to try to attract women in the trade. We're working with all kinds of community organization and pre-center programs because we're in a thriving, growing industry. I spent 44 years in the labor movement, and most of it was running around the country dealing with a closure of a mine, mill, or factory, and what that did to a community and the families that occupied that community. And it is such a different experience working in a growth industry, in an industry which is insatiable. Data is doubling every year, and so it's just an opportunity for highly skilled workers without a college degree to make 6-figure incomes, and you work for 200 different contractors, so you're going to get along with somebody, and so it's just a great opportunity for folks.
John, thank you for that, and I appreciate the dialogue. We talked about this earlier. I think one of the things that I've always looked at is, in Prince George's County, we are predominantly a Black and brown community. And so we are, extremely diverse. when you talk about minority contract participation, where does the intersection happen, right? How do we, because we have union companies, we have non-union companies, both in the construction trades. Where do you see a intersection where they both kind of meet to move a data center forward?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Alexander. Because we're a nonprofit, uh, we are our membership has doubled in the last 7 years. We have almost 15,000 members, but we're making a lot of money. But we're a nonprofit, so we've been using that money to commit to our goals. We're a trade union. Our goals are to make sure everybody in our society has agency and has power and has their voices heard. And so we've been having we've been having events where we invite minority and women-owned businesses and not part of our organization to come in and qualify with our large contractors who are in the data center field, and for joint venturing opportunities. And also the after Loudoun County, the largest county for data centers in the country is right there in Prince William County next door, which is a majority non-white county. And there's a there's a in that county on the west side of the county where there's they call the rural crescent is where we're building the data centers. There's a lot of pushback by these 10-acre homeowners. They don't want any kind of development. But on the east side of the county, represented by 4 African American supervisors out of the 8, there that is where the benefits. That's where the jobs are being created. That's where our members are from. That's where the revenue's going. And that county, one project alone, it's bigger than the quantum in Frederick. When it's completed, it's going to be giving $12 billion a decade to that county in income. I know a supervisor just opened up a great crisis resource center because of the money that was generated by the data centers already. The 44 already operating in the county. We're working with CASA and the NAACP. The statewide president of NAACP is married to the supervisor there in Prince William County. For 5 years now, we've been working with both Cozy Bailey and his wife, Andrea, to build pre-apprenticeship programs, to build opportunities. And we're looking not just for recruitment, but also for these minority contractors. So we're pressing upon the industry to give opportunities to small companies to get into the data centers, doing EV charging, doing the solar arrays on the roof, doing some of the low voltage work. One of our largest minority contractors, that's what they do. They do low voltage. They swap out all the equipment in the data centers and just changing all the wires. But we'd love to see someday one of those companies be doing the big power work in there. Power Solutions, which is a Prince George's company, is the biggest player in the area. And they have a prefab shop in Prince George's County as well. So they're making stuff here that's being deployed in Virginia. Now, our members are, we do construction in all segments of the electrical industry. So mixed use residential, light industrial, light commercial. And so we want to stay competitive in those areas of construction. So in our latest contract, we focus on all of our growth is in data centers. So how do we reward the workers in data centers without hurting our smaller contractors in those other segments of the economy? And so what we did was we focused that we now have double time after 10 hours instead of without having to work a 60-hour work week, and time and a half after 8 without working a 40-hour work week, and paid time off, 2 weeks paid time off. So we approved these things, which are mainly paid for by the data center industry, so we can be competitive in other markets. And so we were able to try all these things. We're able to, for instance, and it's Washington, D.C., right next door to Prince George's County. There's 12 flag football teams, women flag football teams. They never had a sports banquet. So we put on a sports banquet in our training center so that we could get the parents. The problem of getting women into the trade is not the young women, it's their parents want to, brag about what college they got into. And so we wanted to show the parents our training centers, show how sophisticated this place is, and also show them that, hey, your daughter is going to, in her 5-year training, is going to make over $340,000 without overtime. And then when she graduates, she's going to be making this $59.50 an hour. So this is all because of the data center industry. We would have been losing and hemorrhaging members with the rising interest rates and what that did to commercial construction. We didn't feel any of that pain, and instead we grew because of the data center industry. So that's kind of why I'm so adamant about this industry. I spent the rest of my career working for the National FLCL, and worked in 39 states. And all I dealt with was going to towns where somebody lost their mill, mine, or factory and showing that somebody cared, having the other local unions in town hold the hands of the people losing their livelihood. And this is so different in watching an industry that is growing and that it's in infancy, respects and listens to workers and pays them well.
On mute. Don, thank you for that. And you brought some points up, and I want to pivot now to Leon because we talked about what I hear was redistribution into resources, right? And Leon, from the Revenue Authority's perspective, we talk about a surplus of dollars that could come in from a commercial tax revenue collection. How else can local businesses and our residents benefit from the redistribution, so to speak, of potential collected revenues?
I think Kelly illustrated best with her illustration where she showed that we can get more police officers, we can get more school teachers. There's a lot of things when people look around the county, they say we want, but they don't understand how we can pay for it. We don't have the revenue. We're short on the finances. In some instances, the budget right now, it could look like it could possibly be in a deficit. So what we've been focusing on is actually growing our commercial base. As if we could build a commercial base, we can actually build more tax revenue. So when you look at those slides that she presented and looked at the recordation tax, which we all are very familiar in Prince George's County, the way the data centers are paying out and the reason why these other counties and districts are getting into them because they actually make a difference in the budget. When you look at Loudoun County, as far as looking at our neighbors, and anybody can just take a quick look as far as look at where the most data centers are within the U.S. Our neighbor Virginia has is the number one location with Loudoun County, and then you go to Silicon Valley, and then you go to Texas. You go to areas right now that when you look at the grade of where we are in the U.S., those that are hemorrhaging or those that are thriving, even though Virginia is next door to us in the DMV area and they had the same loss of federal workers, they are still ahead and still thriving. Why? Because they have data centers backing them in their budgets, and it's a different type of income stream, economic development. Texas, you have a lot of people going there because not just the taxes, because of the growth, but also when you look at the data centers and all the hyperscalers that's going down in that area, it's the same situation. My concern as far as just looking at development and even just looking at the aforementioned of what the governor sees Maryland as the future when we're talking about on the area of commerce, we would like to make Maryland the Silicon Valley of the East. But we cannot do that if we don't have data centers part of our plan. We have quantum coming in. We're doing partnerships with Microsoft. We have the universities as far as like UMD and actually Morgan State with their improvements and the donations coming in. Even Bowie State is doing really well. We have tech hubs that are coming into Maryland, but with that, they want to see a data center. And my concern is that we're going to have all the opportunities, but yes, there is going to be some concerns about what can happen. But I would say do your fact checking. And the thing is not that you have to actually take an airplane and go out to Silicon Valley. Go and see Ashburn. Go into Loudoun County. I worked there for 10 years. I know the areas very well. And when you see the way the situations are done and the way that things have been set up, it's to hear some of the pushback that we're having on data centers is kind of amazing. I've had some conversations where people were talking about just today, I was having a conversation for contract. They're like, I can't believe that we're having so much conversation about an area that has sat dormant for over 20 years in Landover Mall. But yet there's nothing else going to happen. And now we're going to lose the commanders to DC. So we're going to have two big parcels. And then right down around the other corner, we're losing Six Flags. And yet we're talking about things that want to come, but we don't want to see it come. And I think that's what we're having not the argument, but they need to see more presentations like Kelly's and more information like what you're doing today, Alex, with the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce, because had another contractor that's an MBE owner, very successful in the county. And he mentioned that, hey, Leon, I'm thinking about getting my people certified in for data centers. He has a successful HVAC company. He says, because what I realized is that they're going to need coolings. And even if I can't do it in DC, I believe it's a good, I mean, I'm sorry, if I can't even do it in the county, I see that there's other places in Maryland that are opening the doors to these opportunities, such as Frederick, where I just cannot not expand my business. Because right now, I think within the last 12 to 18 months, we have got a very good sense of what AI future may be. You've seen a lot of people getting laid off. You've seen the news regarding that trades are the future. I think that is, you have to shift with the times. I mean, everything that we're seeing right now, if we don't prepare properly, we can get left behind. The only advantage that we have is in Prince George's County is we have the most undeveloped land out of all of Maryland. But the question is, if you don't have leadership, and leadership is what matters. That's what I also saw in Kelly's presentation, is that they realized that we have to make it where we listen to the constituents, but we also make sure that we give something back, that it's a win. And when I say that, is that initially in Loudoun County, when they were doing their buffers, they were doing it as maybe just 50 to 100 square feet. Then they realized that 500 is the best norm for the filters, for the norm for the decibels. So they didn't go back to 250 square feet. They said, we're going to start at 500. Even if Prince George's County started 1,000, as far as distance between there is housing, I think people have to understand that we are benefiting, that we're not the front runner in this situation. We have so many neighboring jurisdictions that we could learn from, that we could advance with, but we also have the most undeveloped land, and we can start neighboring and partnering with all these different areas to make it a win-win and keep some of these jobs in the county and develop these wins. I mean, I've seen some of the talks online regarding Six Flags. You have 500 acres. Yes, some people want an art district, they want entertainment. There's a lot of eateries, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of stuff they're saying, comparing it to the $75 million that we make in National Harbor. But you have 500 acres. You mean that we couldn't carve out in the back maybe 100 acres just for data centers that nobody would even see, and then we can still get that revenue that can help pay for everything else? I just think that at the end of the day, we have to start thinking that smart development and creating pathways and careers for the future, um, as well as stop relying our tax base just to be on the tax burden of those that work, choose to live in Prince George's County, and have to pay the higher taxes but cannot reap all the benefits.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And and one of the things that I was hearing, and just across the conversation, that I think you alluded to is, what else does a data center power or supply from Access Energy, right? There's a lot of uses here. But then also Don, we were talking earlier, and Leon, you and I have talked about this several times. We have the contractors in the county who are ready to go. We have contractors who have the manpower, the resources to build a data center and be primes. We have it. We have the skill talent. And so, when you think about, again, the surrounding region, you know, things are moving very quick. All right. And so in 5 to 7 years, and I'm going to pivot to Julie, because Julie is also one of our neighbors. Well, let's say two counties over, right? And so, or one county over, when we talk about the things that are coming up around us, one, how long does it take to actually build a data center? I don't know if we've ever addressed that. It takes a long time for what I understand. But what is the global window for data centers, right? This is not a forever project. These things are going to hyperscale the need for data, and then at some point it's going to level off. So we can kind of address that and talk about, well, what are we seeing around trends, and how much of a window do we have to make a decision or not make a decision?
Really good question, Alexander, and I wish that I could answer specifically, but there was a tremendous opportunity here in Maryland. This development is happening all around us. It's happening in the neighboring states. It's within Maryland. And, if it comes to a neighboring state or a neighboring county, that's going to be great. But that's not going to help Prince George's County or the county that it goes in. or any jurisdiction that's really interested in making a difference needs to jump on this bandwagon and get started on this as soon as possible. And it starts with making sure that your zoning is in place, that you can actually get these projects and you put the safeguards in place that your community that's going to address your community needs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I know we could talk about this. I mean, there's so much more to this conversation, and there are a lot of things that are happening. I know that there's a task force and there's different things. And Kelly, you and I've talked. I've actually spent an entire day in Frederick with Quantum Loophole, and I've met with their permitting department, Frederick's permitting department, and the economic development, and their chamber, and we were sitting down talking, and I'm just listening. You know, the opposition is everywhere, but I did not hear in the conversation a no, right, from the industry. It's more of identifying, well, what is it that you want that we can provide? And I think that happy medium is a question of conversation. It does start with the facts. And again, I appreciate you all for being here. I want to open it up again to the audience if there are additional questions, maybe one or two that we can address. But for our panelists, are there additional data points that maybe I did not cover that you would want to maybe share with our audience tonight?
There's one thing that I would like to say, Alexander, and it's just kind of like the overarching umbrella of this, and it's kind of like in conjunction with all the questions that you've asked. One of them is that we've had the great benefit here in Maryland to learn a lot from our neighbors, right? So the lessons that we have learned from Loudoun County, all of us have gone, we've seen what Loudoun County has done. I would say, even if you talk to the leadership in Northern Virginia, they will say they learned a lot of lessons from what they started to do 20 years ago, right? And I think the joy, if we can call it that, that I get from, leading the Maryland Tech Council is our job is to find innovators. Right. And the innovations that are happening every day in this industry and all of the other industry means that there's just going to be so many other lessons learned. Right. Innovation when it comes to HVAC and electrical and noise and water usage and energy usage, like all of that is promoting itself every single day, not just for this industry, but for other industries combined. So what we have right now is hugely improved from when it started 20 years ago as far as the the site distance, right? The placement distance between residential and the noise barriers and the emergency generation. I think those are things that we can really take on as a community and say, okay, we've learned a lot. Let's continue to innovate and move forward. This is not the final product, right?
Definitely. I'm going to read one or two questions. There's a data point that I did want to mention. And Kelly, I think it was at the data center summit that you hosted in Frederick. And one of the conversations that came up was goal of Loudoun County 20 years ago behind data centers was just to move their commercial tax base from 19 to 22%. And in 20 years, it's gone from 19 to 50% of their commercial tax base, which is significant. That is redistribution into roads, bridges, schools, infrastructure expansion, the whole nine. And Leon, to your point, when we think about the budget in Prince George's County, we're at about 28%, maybe 27, 28% right now in commercial taxes. A bump of 4% could equate to a couple $100 million in just revenue. I recently had a conversation with Prince William County, which is, again, they're not the leader, right? But they're neighboring to Loudoun. Their revenue from data centers was roughly over $300 million just from the data centers they do have. And so I'm gonna segue to a question that I have, and this is from Miss Cassandra Logan, um, and the question is: the real elephant in the room is the demographic differences between Prince George's County and Loudoun County. We are concerned that as a majority Black and Brown county, our health and well-being will not be prioritized or even truly considered. Does the report mention include info on demographics and population density in the data center locations? That is a really good question. I will give it to the panelists first. I do have some data I would like to share relative to that, but I'll open it up to you all.
I'll just say in regard to the study, I don't see in the study a demographics of the counties and a comparison amongst counties. I'll just go back to Don's points in his presentation, and not necessarily with Loudoun County, but with Prince William County being a majority non-white community there, and the amount of effort that's gone into building up that commercial base with data centers in that county.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, and I'd like to comment. You know, I know about the hog farms, North Carolina, and what it's done to the African American rural community there. My wife, all her family has asthma. They grew up in the Ship Channel, used to, poor Latino family, and they thought it was hereditary. I go, no, you're near the petrochemical capital of the world, and your houses are right on top of it. This is different. These data centers, you know, like the smelter they replaced, this is such a more cleaner environment. These are clean, safe environments once they're built. Um, the noise, the is you saw the decibel level. These are what's unique is these are safe jobs. I've worked all over this country in all kinds of industries and coal mining as well, organizing workers, and I've seen what our development has done to historically underserved communities. This is not what this industry is about. This industry is the reason I'm so adamant, I feel if you don't have a data center, you're going to be left behind. This is like not having highways and railroads this is like not being on the metro system. This is, uh, uh, this is the future of our economy. And, you know, when Kelly and I were at the University of Maryland last week in engineering school, the keynote speaker, Delegate Reed from Virginia, he represents Ashburn. There's 112 data centers in his district. That's the most in the country by far. He says he's had one complaint by the same individual every other year and no other complaints by the residents. And this is the epicenter of the data center industry. You know, I feel for I work with the environmental community. I'm trying to get solar arrays built. I'm trying to make sure that those are good jobs, not just tasks. You know, a lot of these arguments are specious. These are safe, clean jobs, and you know, the workers are always like the canary in the coal mine. You know, as workers, we're the ones who first feel, you know, those dangers, and we're there all day long. And you know, not, you know, we're self-insured. None of our members have problems with their hearing from data centers. We would know it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to address this question. And Julie, I have a question specifically for you. I'm going to segue to that. Um, there's some information to Cassandra's question that I would like to share, which I think will kind of debunk some of the myths around some of the environmental concerns relative to Black and Brown communities. So a few years ago, there's a resident by the name of Andre Perry who produced a study through the Brookings Institute called the Black Progress Report. In that progress report, it identified progress of Black and Brown people in 10 of the DMV counties. The DMV counties are classified as Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Charles County in Maryland, Washington, D.C., 5 counties in Northern Virginia, Prince William, Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, Loudoun, and 1 county in West Virginia, which is Johnson County, West Virginia. And the reason is 25% of the workforce commuted to DC or worked in the federal government. So out of the 10, the number 1 county for Black progress, and Black progress meaning quality of life, health care, access to infrastructure, salaries, was Loudoun County, the number 1. The number 2 county was Fairfax. Out of the 10, Prince George's County had the highest density population, but it ranked in the bottom third. This is without a data center. When we talk about air quality in the state, when we talk about environmental concerns, air quality in the state, Prince George's County does not rank very high for air quality. These are statistics. We talk about the healthcare measuring across the state of Maryland. The system here is not rated as high as neighboring jurisdictions and our state partners. So when the argument comes up, where the data doesn't match. Now, if we talk about on the national statistic of the top 20 counties in America for Black and Brown people, the number 3 county in America is Loudoun County. The number 4 county is Montgomery County. In the top 20, Prince George's County did not rank. And this is a study that was done in the last 2 to 3 years. So I agree with everyone. This is our opportunity. Let's assess where we really are. We have a high dense population. We have a ton of assets, a ton of resources. But are we necessarily looking at what we have and we are baking the cake, right? Because once we miss this opportunity, I don't believe it's coming back. This is just my 2 cents. So I want to put that out there, just as a reference point that we can all take a look at, and just take a hard look at where do we really arguing about when we talk about data centers in Prince George's County, and where are we going to pivot knowing this information?
Yeah, so
So one of
Alexander, I just want to say to that point, for any community that's out there, especially those communities that feel as if their needs haven't been addressed, right? In the Black and brown community in which you're talking about right now. In order to be able to continue to strive to meet those needs, you need the increased revenue in order to be able to offset what some of those needs that are not being met, right? And in Maryland right now, the reality is that there's not a lot of possibility for other types of growth industries. People are not knocking down our door in Maryland to be able to come and create new jobs in Maryland. It's just not happening. Our growth rate isn't there. Um, the business climate isn't there, quite frankly, right now, right? And if we do not, as a state, and in this case, in the local jurisdictions, take advantage of an industry that wants to be here. If we don't do that, and this was one of your original questions of, yeah, what is the risk? The risk is that these needs that the communities have will not be addressed. There will not be additional revenue because we don't have a whole lot of options with people coming and knocking down our doors saying we want to set up, 4,800 jobs so that we can build this new data center complex. We won't have that. And I think the way out is to be able to look at an industry that has learned a lot, they've innovated a lot, and they're looking to be a good, valuable member of our community, without providing a lot of stress on the community, on the county. And we didn't even talk about that, right? We didn't talk about the fact that you have, let's just say you have an area that's general industrial zoning right now. That could be a lot of different things in Prince George's County. I know every county has a list of what that actually means, but they're not going to be an overabundance of jobs that are there where you're going to have to build a new school. You're not going to have to build new transportation. You're not going to have to create new roads. You're not going to have to bring in more water sewer lines. And if you do, in order to create that water loop, then they typically pay for that, right? So there's very little investment from a county, from a local jurisdiction to bring in an entity that is going to give money every single year to a county. And that's a really tough deal to turn down in the state of the economy of Maryland as it stands right now.
Absolutely. So I want to segue to Julie because I do have a question. I know Mark has been waiting patiently, and his question was how many data centers are in Calvert County, and are there near Calvert Cliffs? I've never seen any when I drive down Route 4.
Right now, there are zero data centers in Calvert County. However, the county has taken a very proactive approach to and for if the opportunity arose and we had a chance to get a data center in our county, the commissioners looked at and the planning commission looked at our zoning ordinance and updated that to identify specific areas within the county where data centers could go, and then started putting other safeguards in place for what the data center projects would have to do, including before they could even present or propose their project, they would have to do a public hearing with the details of their project um, in the area where the project is being proposed to be built, so that all the residents in the community could be able to come out, better understand the project, have transparency, and get all of their questions answered. So that's the approach that we're taking in Calvert County, because we recognize that data centers present a very unique and a good opportunity for the county. So hopefully that answered the question.
Oh, thank you. We have some more questions, and some of the questions I think we'll have to circle back on, and also we'll have to leave to other authorities to answer relative to mandates of participation. We can also look at where data centers primarily are positioned in the region relative to communities, and then I think the last question was close proximity to the residential neighborhoods in Loudoun County, and that's also something we can circle back on and get that data for everyone who attended. Now, I don't have any more questions. I know there's a lot more data out there. There's a lot more time for a dialogue, and I'm pretty sure we are going to circle back and have more communication. But I think this has been a great start. We put out some positive facts. Kelly had an excellent presentation that I would like to redistribute on our website, just so our members can have a time to research on their own and for our broader community. But if there are some last statements or words that you all would like to share, please do.
I just have one last thing to say is that my job is to try to get as many of these data centers as I can in our jurisdiction because they're not static buildings once they're built. There is constant renovation. And so we have on any given day 6 or 7 contractors working in every built data center. And there's almost 200 in Loudoun County and 44 in Prince William. And that's 6 or 7 folks, 6 or 7 contractors, 30 people working on any given day doing some kind of maintenance or retrofitting or reorganizing. And so those are jobs. And we're very cavalier about unemployment right now because of the unemployment for the last decade, decade and a half. But I've experienced high unemployment most of my career, and these things are just tons of really safe, clean environments to work in after they're built, and that's never going away. And I don't. I think it's and the jobs of tomorrow are being performed today.
Yeah, thank you. And Alexander, I just want to say thank you for inviting us to be a part of this. I think these are really important conversations to be happening right now. Um, these are really tough decisions, I believe, for policymakers and elected officials to make because they are getting, some level of pushback from some community members. Our job is to be able to create a narrative and an opportunity to have dialogue so that those community members have a voice if they have concerns and to be able to connect, right? We always say at the Maryland Tech Council, we are the connective tissue amongst the community and the innovators and the decision makers and policy leaders. But these are really important conversations to have. So I applaud you and the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to have this. I will say all of the information that we've done, the studies that we've done at the Maryland Tech Council is available on our website. If anybody has questions, it's at mdtechcouncil.com. Please feel free to use that. Please feel free to use our presentation that we did this evening to provide information to your community so that everybody is playing with the same level of facts that I think is so important when we have these conversations.
And thank you all for joining us as well. Julie, Leon?
I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity. I guess I should say the other hat I wear is the Director of Economic Development for Calvert County. So in case there's anybody who has other just general questions about data centers, we do have a web page on our website as well. And we did an information session for our community, similar to what you all are doing now, and that had been recorded. And we try to answer all the questions from the community members that night, and that's also available on our website. So there could be some similarities there as well. Thanks for the opportunity today.
Just want to say thanks, Alex, for putting this together. This is a great forum, and we had great conversation and some great questions. One thing that I would like to share, just because from the State of Commerce, I know there was a little email or it was written about in newspapers. Just last week, AWS announced FastNet, a dedicated high capacity transporter with fiber that was going to be coming from Ireland, coming to the state of Maryland, which would give us some of the fastest connectivity to be able to send, if we had a data center here, once they connected, to send out. And it's just amazing that this came out because the previous week is when everything went down, when AWS went shut down because there was a situation in Loudoun when it got overloaded. These are the type of things that we're looking at in the future. Because we went from, in our generation, at least maybe I'm dating myself, we saw an iPhone created, and then from the iPhone we saw an app store, and then we saw all these apps, but nobody ever thought about all the data that was going to go to these apps. And now our kids are the next generation that's living this, and they just been born in it. And there's so much data that's out there. But I believe it was Julie, no, it was Kelly that mentioned in her presentation. The cloud is not a real thing. The cloud is a data center. These apps need a home. And those people that are those jurisdictions that can house them, they get to collect rent. They get to collect money. And with that rent and that money, they can build better schools. Somebody mentioned and said, well, why does this place have all the fine dining? Well, because they have businesses, because they have the infrastructure, because they have the police officers, they have all the support that makes a community a real community with the resources. And all we're saying here for the different jurisdictions that's talking in Maryland is that we know that we have the resources, and we just want to debuff some of the myths so we can actually put them into fruition and make it happen here in Maryland. Now, do I think we have to have protocol? Absolutely. I think we need to do our due diligence, but at the same time, just saying no is not a choice. Because if that was the case, all of us would still have flip phones and wouldn't use an iPhone that has all the apps. We can't have the phone that has the apps, and we know the cloud's not in the sky. We got to get the data center somewhere nearby. Thank you, Alex, so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, man. And trust me, you don't want to see me with a flip phone. It's bad. I do have one last question to answer, because one of the questions was, how long does it take to build a data center?
Well, the things that this market has, and our Maryland workers would love to do it in Maryland, and half of our membership lives in Maryland, love to work here doing it, is we build it in 9 to 12 months, whereas the rest of the nation takes two years or more. And so what we lack is power, but what we have is a skilled trained workforce. So that's one of the leg ups we have. But all these power is number one, and then and so no, we know how to get it done because we've been doing it for so many years, and UA, the fitters and plumbers. So that is one advantage we have and it's all about shovel to market. So that's one advantage this region has.
Deal. Good deal. All right. Well, again, we're at time just about. I want to thank each of our panelists for your insight and taking time with us tonight. This was very helpful. There's quite a few things that I just was not aware of that I think also helped to debunk even some of the things that I thought I knew. So I just want to thank each of you all for just sharing this insight, and we will definitely follow up. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We will reshare the transcripts from this discussion and also the presentation that Kelly had with us today. Thank you again. I'll give you back 6 minutes of your time because we have until 7:30. But thank you, and have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.